Hello chaps and chapettes, how's it going? And welcome to the history of the G-84 Thunderjet. Yes, the G-84 Thunderjet. Now, the Republic Sorry, did I say G-84? I meant F-84. Good start there, as usual. Now, the F-84 jet fighter began its life in 1944. As it went to paper, America had started to enter the jet age. The plane was proposed as a day fighter for the US Army Air Force. Originally, Republic started work on converting the P-47 into a jet. However, cost and airframe issues stopped this planned vehicle, and thus the development of a new streamlined turbojet engined plane began. Design went well, and by late 1944, 3 XP-84 prototypes were ordered, promising much better for performance over the current jet fighter in service, which was the P-80 Shooting Star. The contract was easily won due to Republic's prior success with single-seated fighters. In January of 1944, an order of 100 planes was placed. This was before the plane even took to the skies. The YP-84A and P-84B, fitted with the Allison J-35 turbojet engines and initially equipped with 6 of the ever-reliable M2 Brownings. The first prototypes took to the skies at Edward Air Force Base on the 28th of February 1946. The P-84 Thunderjet had limited test flights before production started, due to delays with the new jet engines. One notable item that was not tested was the wingtip fuel tanks, which later caused problems with the production variants. With the new naming system being implemented in 1947, the P-84 became the F-84, F for fighter. The new F-84Bs, now fitted with modern quick-firing M3 Browning 50 calibers, became operational in late 1947, and things did not start well. The plane was limited to a speed of Mach 80.0, and could only accelerate at a maximum of 54 meters per second due to structural failure and control surface locking. The fuselage had a nasty tendency to wrinkle, the fuselage skin. Added to this, parts were short, which made maintenance extremely hard and gave the plane its first unfortunate nickname, the Mechanic's Nightmare. Things only got worse when the entire F-84B fleet were grounded due to structural failures in May of 1964. Sorry, 64? 64. Sorry, I think I might have got my dates wrong there. I wrote 1984 for some reason, no idea why. Things were looking dire for the F-84, with the B and C versions being considered incapable of their intended roles. However, a reprieve was coming with the F-84D. The plane was under construction, and when it rolled out off the line, it proved satisfactory, and had addressed all major issues. 1948, that's what I meant to say earlier. All major issues of the prior versions. A fly-off with the current fighter of the F-80 Shooting Star showed that the F-80 had a worse low-altitude climb rate, but it had much better takeoff ability. The F-80 was also a better overall climber, was much more manoeuvrable, and just basically did a much better job over the F-84. However, the F-84 had a much greater payload capability, was much faster at low altitudes, and also, most importantly, had a much greater range. In 1951, the definitive version of the straight-winged F-84 came to be, with the F-84G. This variant had a more powerful engine, with a refueling boom, autopilot, new framed canopy, stronger structure, a new computer-assisted gun, targeting computer, and the ability to carry the Mark 7 nuclear bomb, a very important feature in the years of the Cold War. Even with these upgrades, the Thunderjet, renamed by its pilots some rather unflattering names, such as the Lead Sled, the Iron Crowbar, a Hole Sucking Air, the Hog, the Groundhog, the Ground Loving Whore, and the World's Fastest Tricycle. Very lucky there not to die. And this was, I think, my first flight in this plane as well, so stock plane, and just getting used to it as well. And these nicknames were due to its horrific takeoff ability, which required a runway length of 10,000 feet, 3,000 metres, to take off fully armed. It even struggled with rocket-assisted takeoffs when it was fully loaded. Things did not get much better for landings either, needing to touch down at around 160 miles per hour at 260 kph. However, once in the air, the plane performed rather well. The thick straight wings allowed for the plane to reach speeds extremely quickly at low altitudes, and it really did serve very well in this respect. Come the time of the Korean War, the F-84s were no longer the fighter interceptors they were designed to be. Progress was quick with the aviation industry, and the new F-86 Sabres proved to be a much better option for the role. However, this did not mean the F-84 was not needed still. It actually proved to be one of the most valuable planes of the war. Their first task was as an escort fighter guarding the B-29s. Although the F-84s did manage a victory over a MiG-15 in their first encounter, unfortunately 2 of the F-84s were lost. And it was plain to see that the new swept-wing MiG-15s were too much for the straight-winged plane, and thus the Thunderjet, much like its older sibling, the P-47 Thunderbolt, now switched to ground attacking. And this is where the plane made its legend. The low-level close air support role was ideal for the F-84, which handled extremely well at low altitude, and was extremely fast as well. And although it was still hard to get off the ground, even with new rocket-assisted takeoff, the plane had very sturdy undercarriage, and it proved very suitable for rough airfields. It could pretty much take off on any airfield, even the roughest of terrain, and also land on it as well, and this proved invaluable for the Korean War. South Korea at the time had a very meagre air force. They actually didn't have any planes with weapons on board at the time. All the airstrips were sort of dirt airstrips. They had a few trainers. They had a very meagre air force. I think they had something like 20 odd planes. It was ridiculous. So the South Koreans were really struggling in that respect. North Korea didn't have much better at the start either, of course. Both nations were very low on the aircraft front. But once the Americans started getting involved, then the Russians started getting involved, and, well, basically we started getting more advanced aircraft coming in. And once things like the MiG-15 started to show up with some very skilled pilots, thanks for coming, B-57, things started to heat up, of course. Now, the F-84 was capable of landing on the Korean airfields, although the operations were mainly carried out from Japan, the mainland of Japan. This meant the plane had to be very heavily fueled, and they had a very short time in Korea. However, the F-84 became the first plane to utilise aerial refuelling in a combat situation, which really did help out for it, and really made a big difference. The F-84s flew a total of 86,408 missions during the Korean War, dropping over 55,000 tons of bombs and 6,000 tons of napalm. The US Army Air Force claims 60% of all ground targets neutralised in the war were from the F-84s. The F-84s managed to get 15 victories over the MiG-15s, while the Soviets claimed 64 F-84 kills themselves. At the end of the war, a total of 335 F-84s were lost in combat. The majority of these were from anti-aircraft fire, and also small arms fire close to the ground. And this was a big problem for the plane. It had this issue of basically being so low to the ground. There was quite a lot of the anti-aircraft fire, and you know, that sort of did cause a lot of problems. Small arms fire was a very big problem. A swept-wing variant of the F-84 did come to be, with the RF-84 Thunderflash, which was mainly used as a photo reconnaissance plane by the Americans and used up until 1970s. It was used sometimes as a bomber, as well as a sort of interceptor, but mainly sort of a bomber or photographer role. The F-84 itself went on to fly with many NATO air forces, with both the straight and swept-wing variants. Yugoslavia kept using the straight-edged wing until 1974, while Greece finally retired the swept-wing variant in the early 90s. So in game, well, we get the F-84B and G versions. Now the F-84B we just saw a couple of minutes ago getting shot down, and the G version is what I'm flying right here. The B is at 7.3 BR and the G is 7.7 BR. You get the B and the G mainly in the American line, however the Gs also sit in the Italian and the French lineup. The plane gets an air spawn, which means it's extremely quick to get to the enemy. The best sort of method for using this plane is to boom and zoom. And you want to really try and catch players as they're climbing or sort of bombers. This thing is a great bomber hunter. The plane's equipped with the M3 Browning, and it has 6 of those, with 300 rounds each, meaning you have a total ammo capacity of 1800 rounds. This is pretty deadly with head-on situations, because the guns are mounted extremely close to each other in the central part of the plane. A single second burst is around 5.2 kilograms of mass, which is a fair amount of lead coming into the enemy. Even stock, this plane performs extremely well. This is actually a stock plane right now that we're seeing. These last 2 games, this plane was stock, you know, and it still performed extremely well in those situations. The plane's not great at turn fighting. It is better suited for the boom and zoom technique. The plane is also relatively sturdy as well. It can take a serious amount of punishment before crashing. It's very hard to kill this thing sometimes. It's also got one of the best climb rates for its BR, which does really help it. You can really get some altitude in this plane very quickly. I think the only plane that's got a slightly better climb rate is the G61 at similar BR ranges. Sorry, G91. Sorry. Brain's going a bit strange there. Upside down 9. In all honesty, this plane is extremely strong, and especially in the Italian lineup, where you're flying with the Germans at this sort of 7.7 BR. It's an extremely strong lineup, and you tend to get a fair few victories. I'd really recommend this plane to aim for. It's a really good first jet. It's very easy to fly. You can sort of get used to it very quickly. It's extremely fun to play as well, and an extremely rewarding plane. Now you can just go for a head-on and kill pretty much every game and guarantee yourself 1 kill, but you are of course going to die from that usually. But you can usually get a couple of kills every game. In this game, 2 kills, 1 assist, and that's pretty much my usual game in this plane, and usually I survive to the end as well. The other thing about this plane is it has an extremely high payload. And it's a very, very dangerous plane to ground forces. The largest payload this plane can carry is 2 1,000-pound bombs and 24 rockets, which means tank busting is a very easy thing to do with this plane. Now, this is some of the climb rate just here, and as you can see, we're getting altitude very, very quickly, catching up to this B-57 that's, doing a typical bomber gameplay of hiding at the end of a match. Now, once Italian tanks come into the game, it's going to help out an awful lot. It's going to be a very good attacker for tanks. So it really is well worth grinding for, and as I said, in itself it is a fantastic plane. Now, going to end the video just here for the replay, and what we're going to do is I'll hop to the hangar and we'll just have a look at it in there. This B-57 just time wastes for the rest of this game. So the F-84G 21RE in-game is fantastic. Now, in the Italian tech tree, you get it unlocked after the attacker line. So as long as you get the P108, the Brada and the B65, you will be able to unlock this once you get to jets. And it really is a fantastic plane. I've been grinding towards the G91 with this, and I unlocked this plane yesterday, I think, and I've already gained pretty much half of the research points for the G91. This thing is just so much fun to play. It's just fantastic. So let's just look at the modifications quickly. So modification wise, you get your usual modifications, but you do get a G suit as well as boosters. Now these are really useful. I want to get the G suit before I get the boosters because pilot blackouts are quite common. So having that extra turning ability is not too useful if you're going to black out every time, so the G suit's a slightly better option. Then of course you've got your ground payloads. Here we've got quite a few options. There are many bomb options. Then there's also many rocket options, as well as the tiny TIMs. So you've got some really deadly rockets on this plane. It can be a really nasty tank buster. And of course this is the same for all nations. So with the French, the F-84 comes after the Baron, which is strange because it's a 7.7 after an 8.0, which does mean you have to grind a little bit further towards this plane to get it. Again, it's pretty much identical, slightly different paint scheme. It is a very cool looking plane, of course, with the Grim Reaper on the front, and again you get the same modifications on this one. Unfortunately you don't get any interesting French rockets on there. And then of course we have the American variant. With the American variant, it's down the fighter line, and it will come after the shooting star, the F-80. So the F-84, you've got the F-84B, and then you've got the G behind the B. Now unfortunately that means you have to grind out the B as well as the G to get it. Sorry, you have to grind out the B before you can even get the G. But the B is not a terrible plane. It's not quite as fast as the G, but it still has the same gun layout. It still has the same payload layout. It's still a very good plane. It's just not quite as good as the G variant. The thing that makes up for that though is it's 7.3, so you are going to be sometimes at much lower BRs, which can help an awful lot. This thing at, you know, a 6.3 BR is just going to be absolutely deadly, and it is just such an effective plane. So I hope you've enjoyed today's video and enjoyed the little bit of history. Let me know below what you think. Have you got the plane? Do you like the plane yourself? Is it one of your favorites? Do you hate this plane? Is it a plane that you really have trouble killing, or is it a plane that you love to see on the battlefield because you can absolutely wreck it yourself? Let me know in the comments below, and I will see you all again next time. Thank you so much for watching. Have a lovely day. Bye bye. Does. This guy's coming in for a head-on. Don't want any of that. Oh! Oh, that was beautiful! Holy crap, that was hilarious.